Izuku Midoriya is born into a world that is overrun by what we know as quirks. Quirks are basically superpowers, and these superpowers are ranging from explosions that come out of your hands to flames that could engulf an entire building to people that look like washing machines. And I don't mean short and stubby, I mean actual washing machines. Yeah. So, a lot of quirks can do a lot of things, and a lot of quirks can do a lot of negative things. And that's just the reality of it. Some people, they got some really messed up quirks, and some people have some really good quirks. But in this world, Izuku is going to get a quirk that is interesting. A quirk that isn't something that doesn't feel like it can really be identified, but it's something that really interests him. Now, Izuku is kind of born into this world, and about 3-4 years into his life, about when he's about 4 years old, he begins to realize that he is a lot smarter than everybody else. Now, the reason why he's a lot smarter than everybody else is kind of unknown to him at this point. But when he goes to the doctor would actually say that it seems that his brain is actually developing at a rapid pace, but it's only developing at a rapid pace when he is consuming new knowledge. And it's interesting, right? It's something interesting. And the doctor says that you could even say that it's some sort of a fast learning quirk. And it allows him to learn things extremely quickly, deduce things extremely quickly, especially if he's already seen that thing happen. Let's just say, for example, Izuku sees somebody and they cross the road over and over and over again. Well, Izuku, unconsciously, of course, not really on his own, but in his own brain, it would actually register when that guy could possibly fall. Because he's seen this person move so many times and so many ways that he knows exactly how his foot pattern should be. So he knows exactly when the guy will fall. Now, Izuku will be able to use this quirk, this fast learning quirk, in various different ways. But Izuku is very intelligent, right? He begins to study different sciences, different creatures, and stuff like that. But there's one thing that really catches his eye, something that really catches his eye, and it's not something like All Might or something like Endeavor or someone like some crazy hero. No. It's a bat. Izuku begins getting massively interested in bats. Now, Izuku would look into these bats, and he would learn of what they are, learn of what they could be, and he realizes that his quirk is a little bit odd. Now, the reason for this, and the reason why he has this conclusion, is because, well, he's not going to be super powered. He's not going to be fighting, at a super high level of strength. So what does he have to do? He has to rely on something outward, rely on something that he can gain. Now, bats utilize something known as echolocation. By sending these signals at a rapid rate, they can identify where things are that are in front of him or in front of them, even if they can't really see very well. Now, Izuku, yes, he can see, but he has to use his advantages to the utmost degree. So what he decides to do is he starts taking very advanced classes that would allow him to learn how to be a basic engineer, allow him to learn kind of different things, and he would even begin to intern in the cities that he lived in, or the city he does live in, and also work in different kind of council with Japan. Now, he would want to learn these kind of situational things with the country of Japan, and also just kind of like the engineering space and or the construction space, and he wants to learn it all. He begins to deep dive in every single thing known in Japan, from buildings, from structures, to the way the roadways are paved, anything you can think of. And then on top of that, he continues learning even more by actually starting to, learn how to utilize martial arts. Now, this is very easy for Izuku. He doesn't actually even need kind of a sensei or a teacher. He kind of just flat out could look up on the internet how to do something, or look up on the internet some of the greatest strikers in Japan, and boom, he's able to mimic them. He learns, and he's able to mimic them. Shoot, he even gains things from someone by the name of Mirako, who is the rabbit hero and very, very deadly in her fighting style, and he continues to learn from her as well. And it seems as if Izuku continues to gain more and more knowledge on his ability to fight. But one day, when he's out and about studying and fighting and learning and doing all these things, he would head home. And as he heads home, well, he would see something going on. He would see something uneasy to him. He would walk up to his window, and he would see that his mother is in the house with another person. This makes him extremely uneasy because his mother would never bring anybody over. That is not what she does, and it makes him extremely kind of worried. So he goes toward a different area that he's hid some things, and he actually pulls out some sort of gadgets he's been working on. Now, these are sort of like batarangs and kind of a similar version of them, at least at this moment, but also some other stuff that would allow him to be very quiet and entering the house. So he enters the house to see what's going on, and he would realize that this person is actually threatening his mother. And in one foul swoop, he's able to swoop in and knock the guy out. Even Inko Midoriya, or his mother, is completely shocked at this, thinking that, how did you do this? I mean, it was so quick, it was almost instant. And Izuku just says to not worry, that he will protect her the way he has to, the best he possibly can, and nobody else will even lay a finger on his own mother. And this is a kid who's around the age of about 10 or 11 at this moment, and he's already able to take out basically fully grown men, obviously with some kind of strategy and some prep time, but still able to do so. Now, from this age to the age of 15, he continues training in martial arts, continues training in anything you could possibly imagine, kind of learning about different things from chemistry, from criminal psychology to anything like that. He begins to learn a lot of that, and as he's doing this, he begins to put his body through a very, very strict regimen, and this allows him to bolster his strength even further. And on top of that, I mean, we are talking about someone who begins to actually build different gadgets, as he leaning into his engineer-like side, right? He begins to build himself his own suit that dons a bat-like logo and has a utility belt and some padded armor that would help him in a combat situation. His whole goal is to get into UA, so he's gonna do what he needs to get done. Now, with all that preparation, the last day of middle school is upon him, and he obviously hears his teacher say, yeah, two kids, they want to go into UA, Bakugo and Izuku, and of course, let's just say the students aren't too fond of this. The students are saying, well, there's no way Izuku's going to get into it. I mean, come on, right? There's no way Izuku gets into UA. He barely even has a quirk. We've seen his quirk, but somebody actually shuts this down really quickly, being that of Bakugo. And the main reason why Bakugo actually shuts this whole thing down isn't because he necessarily is best friends with Izuku, but he does believe that Izuku is at a pretty decent level in terms of strength. I mean, he's seen what he can do. I mean, he's heard about what the technology he's been creating, and he's heard about kind of this martial art, all these martial arts that he's been actually getting equipped in, and all of these things. And he begins to believe that, hey, he's no joke. Yes, he doesn't have your typical quirk, he can't shoot explosions, fire, he can't fly, but Izuku is at a pretty high level in terms of potential to be a hero, and that is no joke, and he actually has pretty decent respect for this, and he does believe that Izuku has a quirk. He's not one of these people that are like, yeah, no, Izuku doesn't have a quirk, he's making all this stuff up, it's not true, blah blah blah, right? It's obviously all a ruse so he doesn't get bullied. No. Bakugo really knows that he has a quirk, even if it is a pretty nerdy or pretty damn nerdy like quirk, right? And even with that said, though, Izuku would kind of just not really care what these people think, at least not to a massive degree, because I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to him what these people are going to do, because a lot of these people, they're not going to be on the same level that he's going to be at. They're not going to be on the same level that Izuku basically will eventually be at, being that he is going to be kind of a pretty high level hero in the near future, right? That is what he's destined to be, and that's what he's going to be, at least on track to do so. So after some, people, yap and talk about certain things, Izuku would now be kind of ready, right? Izuku would be heading out of his middle school and would be heading out in general, and he's just ready to kind of go on to the next part, go on to whatever is to come for him, and that's just getting through some training, maybe doing this or that. But as he's writing stuff down, journaling as usual, and as he's heading home, well, it seems like some stuff is going on. It seems as if Izuku realizes that, well, it seems that there's a villain on the loose. Now, he gets kind of like information for this, like he gets kind of these comms that he has, very like police radars and stuff like that. And he gets information from them. Like these police radars begin to go off and basically tell him like, hey, yeah, this person is or this villain is showing up in this area and blah blah blah, right? That's what's happening right now. And it seems as if Izuku actually hears about this and then would be confronted by it extremely quickly, because when he's underneath everything, when he's underneath this bridge, it seems as if the manhole cover that is next to him begins to shake. And as it begins to shake, a villain would burst out the top of the manhole cover and immediately begin to seek out whoever the closest person is, being that of Izuku Midoriya. Now, the sludge villain would immediately come after Izuku, and Izuku would evade pretty simply. Now, it's not an easy task to actually beat the sludge villain here, because Izuku doesn't have powers, right? He doesn't even have all of his tech with him, but he does throw some things that slow down the sludge villain, and even kind of gets a large trash can container ready in hopes of kind of subduing the sludge villain and then kind of getting rid of him or containing him to a massive degree. But of course, like I said, it's not going to be that simple. He's not going to be able to just, contain the sludge villain automatically, but he does throw a bit of like a smoke bomb in the direction of the sludge villain and is able to kind of evade him for the most part and get out of the tunnel. As he gets out of the tunnel, though, it seems as if another person would then approach, and this person, well, is All Might himself. All Might would approach pretty damn quickly, and Izuku would watch as he would basically one-punch this sludge villain, and he would be in complete shock and awe. He would be thinking, wow, this is crazy. The number one hero stands in front of me, that this is on a different level of amazing. I can't believe this. In which Izuku would stand there and ask All Might for basically a autograph. As he gets the autograph and stuff like that, he would also tell All Might like, hey, I have a question. And he would ask, hey, do you think I could be a hero even though I have a quirk that is not necessarily a strong one? Which All Might would be, conflicted at what he should really say to the kid. But he asked the kid, like, well, for one, what is your quirk? Like, what do you mean it's a weak quirk, right? In which eventually Izuku would tell him exactly what his quirk is, in which he would tell Izuku that, hey, he has a quirk, and yes, his quirk might not be the most fancy, might not be the most powerful, but it's something that is going to make him unique and something that will allow him to do, hopefully, great things. And he's going to be able to basically do great things no matter what. Now, does that mean it's through being a hero? Well, he's not so sure. But after saying that, All Might's about to say something else. Maybe along the lines of, working hard or maybe the potential of him being a hero. But before he could really tell Izuku those things, he just abruptly says, hey, I gotta go, and he jumps off. This would kind of force Izuku into thinking, like, oh, does he really think that I can't be a hero? That this is ridiculous, that this isn't something that I wanted to hear. And Izuku believes that he needs to hear the end of that conversation. So what does he do? Well, immediately he would begin to grapple hook on All Might's leg, and he would drag himself up toward him. As they're jumping off and then landing on a building, well, All Might tells him to never do that ever again, that was psychotic, and that he should really just, be careful. In which Izuku asks him one more time, does he really believe he can be a hero? He wants to know. He wants to know from him. He wants to know from his idol. And All Might, well, he shrinks down in size. Boom, out of nowhere. He goes from this tall man to this very short and elderly looking dude. And this would confuse Izuku, but Izuku would ask him, what's going on? I mean, seriously, is he actually All Might, or what's happening? And of course he would say, yeah, I'm All Might. But long story short, I was hurt and so on, and yeah, that's why I'm in a small version of myself, in which Izuku would kind of understand, but also kind of not understand. But All Might would then tell him that having a quirk sometimes isn't good enough. That having a quirk sometimes is just not enough to be the hero you want to be. And some are lucky and some are not. And he can't tell straight up exactly if Izuku's one or the other. But from his experience, he has a good feeling that Izuku's just not that lucky. In which Izuku, hearing this, is obviously saddened. I mean, this is something that he didn't want to hear. This is something that, well, at the end of the day, he wanted to be a hero. He wanted to be like All Might. He wanted to be a hero. He wanted to be another level of hero. He wanted to save people. But now he feels like maybe he can't. Maybe he can't. All Might would then leave, and this would eventually lead to Izuku leaving as well. But when Izuku would leave, he would realize something. He would hear all of this screaming. He would hear all of this noise. He would hear rampant and rapid voices speaking, and he would see the sludge villain has escaped. And he would also see that someone he knows is within that sludge villain. Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo was trapped within the sludge villain, and he realizes that this is legitimately his fault. Izuku would begin looking for any gadgets he possibly has, anything that will work. And he begins to think that maybe he has nothing in his bag right now that would actually work. But it doesn't matter. He's gonna have to try. So that's exactly what Izuku does. He tries. He goes out there to save Katsuki Bakugo. He uses any gadget he could possibly think of, anything from a sonic batarang that he has that is a massive prototype and barely even working, to just any weaponry or anything, pencils and sharp objects that he can throw at the eyes of the sludge villain. But without a second thought, he was there. He was immediately grabbing onto Bakugo with his grappling hook, and we would try to drag Bakugo out of it, getting Bakugo out of the area just initially. But the sludge villain himself, well, he's not giving up that easily. The sludge villain would come charging at the both of them, and Izuku would try to react, and Bakugo would send an explosion right at the sludge villain, trying to stop it, in which Izuku would even try to throw some kind of sharp objects at the eyes of the sludge villain once again. But luckily someone is there to save them, and that is All Might. In one foul swoop, All Might lands a clean Detroit smash, smashing the sludge villain out of the area and ending the sludge villain, at least for now. Everybody's in shock, everybody's happy to see All Might, and Bakugo and Izuku sigh in relief that they're not freaking dead. In which, that was a scary thing to deal with, but luckily it all, happened in the positive outcome. And Izuku feels pretty good about what just occurred, in which he does get lectured by the other heroes and stuff, but he basically just heads off and doesn't even think about it, in which Bakugo would give him a bit of a head nod, basically in a thanks for saving my ass, in which Izuku would nod back, and he wasn't doing it just for the sake of acknowledgement. He was doing it because Bakugo, yes, there may not be best of friends, but they have some mutual respect, right? And he's going to go out of his way to save him and save anybody, really, no matter what. Now, in terms of lacking some, some equipment, that was definitely an issue. Because if he had all of his equipment, it would have been probably a little bit easier, but obviously he didn't have all of his equipment on him coming from school and all, but still, it worked out to be fine, and he decides that he's going to head home before the presser kind of gets even more mad at him. As he heads home, though, he would be approached by somebody. He would be approached by All Might. All Might would tell the kid that he's sorry, that he's really sorry, that he told him that he probably couldn't be a hero, that there was a hard chance that he would fail. But he sees now that the kid's passion, the kid's unwavering spirit, the kid's ability to jump into the feat of action without even a second thought. If someone's on the line, if someone's life is on the line, if someone needs saving, it seems like the kid is ready to save them. And with that, and in that reality, that's exactly what a true hero is going to be. A true hero needs to be. In which Izuku is shocked to hear this, but he stands still and thanks him. Thank you. He thanks All Might profusely for the confidence, for the vote of confidence, for everything. In which All Might says no, there's no need to thank him. Frankly, he should be angry with him because he underestimated him. He underestimated Izuku, but he's not going to underestimate him anymore, and he would like to offer him something that nobody knows about. And he tells him to meet him at Dagobah Beach tomorrow night, and that they have a lot of training to do if he decides to accept. In which Izuku would do just that, meeting him, and All Might would tell him that he will personally train Izuku, but he wants to know if he will become the successor to One For All, successor to All Might, to himself. In which Izuku would be shocked to hear this and would ask, what is he talking about, successor to One For All? What are you talking about? In which All Might says and explains his quirk, and then explains exactly the legacy of the quirk. And he says that it's going to be a lot of training, a lot of work, but it's going to be something that would get him prepared, and something that would allow him to be great, even greater than he already is, and already was going to be. In which Izuku would look at him and say that deep down inside, he wanted to make it on his own. He wanted to push himself, and he wanted to be the best hero he could be on his own, through whatever quirk that was gifted to him, through whatever thing he was born with. But he feels like he would be doing a dishonor to reject the quirk of the number one hero. That he would be doing a dishonor when given, and frankly, not just given, earned an opportunity at utilizing the quirk of the number one hero. It would be a dishonor to reject it. So he tells him that he accepts, that he will be even better than him. In which, of course, All Might would say that he expects nothing less, because he knows that he can be and will be even better than him. In which Izuku would begin the training, but his training, it wouldn't take long for him to be ready. If not, he's already ready to take on One For All. So he begins to actually utilize One For All so much earlier than you could possibly imagine. His martial arts skill on a completely different level than even All Might himself. And his ability to actually create suits and utilize them, and also utilize gadgets with One For All, is on a massively high level. After months would go by, 10 months, not just of training, but of learning One For All. And keep in mind, he has a quirk that allows him to learn, and his body to basically learn things a lot quicker. So when he begins to actually adapt One For All into his fighting, he realizes that One For All can be used in a way of martial arts. That One For All can be used just throughout his entire body. 5, 10, 15, 20% of it. He doesn't need to crank it all the way up to 100% and shatter his body. he can utilize it in a specific way and utilize it in a way that would benefit him massively. So throughout these 10 months, he would learn how to properly utilize One For All. And let's just say that's a lot of time and a lot of training. And yes, it's an unknown kind of quirk and an unknown thing to him after he basically ingested the quirk in himself. But now that he understands kind of how it works, and now that he kind of understands how he needs to approach it, Izuku now understands and knows that he can be the hero that he wants to be. And when UA would already be approaching, we're talking he would already be cranking 30%, maybe even 35% of One For All. And this is because he takes things very slow in this regard. He knew he had a lot of time. There was no purpose in rushing and hurting himself and doing this or that. So he took things slow. I mean, there's a good chance he could do 50 or 60%, but he didn't want to risk anything, risk his bodily harm. So he took things slow. He basically kind of paced himself out, continued to unravel his gadgets, his suits, and stuff like that, even making a suit that that complements heavily towards One For All, in which obviously all of these things help, but Izuku himself is benefiting from this ability to kind of utilize One For All in a different way, because he still adapts kind of this persona of the quote-unquote Batman. Now, Izuku would obviously continue creating these suits with his kind of enjoyment of kind of Batman and all, or kind of this idea of Batman, and also this enjoyment of what bats are as creatures and how he adapted it to his style. He basically kind of built himself up already before he even gained One For All in the first place. So he's already ready for the first little bit of the UA entrance exam. And let's just say his ability to use One For All at like 35% and his ability to utilize his suits and also his gadgets, well, he easily obliterates almost everything that is there. Dashing around, smashing into different robots, destroying them over and over and over again, and then eventually seeing that 0-point robot. The 0-point robot, though, yes, initially he doesn't want to mess with it, but then he realizes that someone is in danger. So he flies down, swooping in, gliding down with by the way, his cape that allows him to glide and pseudo fly because of his kind of propulsion with One For All. And he would pick up this girl by the name of Ochaku Uraka to save her from the 0-pointer. Now, this was a very simple task, and he does all of these things kind of like, with one hand behind his back type of thing. Like, he does it so easily, and everybody really wonders who this kid is. Wonders what kind of person is this, student, this future hero. What can he do? What can he truly do? And a lot of the teachers are watching, and All Might is watching as well, and he tells them that kid, him right there, he is the future. That he is the future of Hero Society. And when all the bad things begin to coalesce, all the bad things come together, and when crime rates begin to spike once again, that kid right there, he will be the new #1 hero. In which everybody looks at All Might, all the teachers, from Aizawa to Cementos to Midnight, they all look at him, oddly, thinking, is he sure about that? I mean, how much does he know about the kid? How much does he truly know? In which Aizawa would scoff a little bit, but smirk, and say that All Might knows the kid very well. Very well. Because that right there, the one that stands there, well, he must be the one that All Might's been talking about for the last few months. The kid that's a bit of a prodigy. But I'll be the one to judge that. In which Aizawa would tell All Might just that, and tell him that he's going to push this kid to whatever height you could possibly imagine. And then they will know if the kid is ready. And All Might would nod his head, but he would remind Aizawa one last time that the kid, he is ready. Because this is only the start for Izuku Midoriya's journey. And this is only the start for this version of Batman. Izuku Midoriya will don the Batman symbol and the Batman logo throughout basically pure enjoyment and also understanding of the bat. The understanding of what bats mean to not only him, but also just in general. The bat is something that he will regard heavily in his style of being a hero. He will glide through the night sky to save people just as much as he would be during the day. And that is exactly why, yes, he dons the bat because he's inspired, and he basically has an infatuation with them, with the bat creature, and an interest in the bat creature. But that's not the only reason why. Heroes alike will stand there in the daylight when things aren't scary, when things aren't creepy, when things don't make you terrified. When the sun is up, it feels as if there's safety. But when the moon is there in clear and beautiful day, when the sun is down and it is freezing, well, that's when truly fear comes out. And that is where Izuku wants to protect everyone. Like somebody flying through the sky, like an absolute savior in the night. That is what he wants to be. Justice from the daylight to the nighttime. And that's the road. That is the road that Izuku Midoriya will take. And that is the road we will go down as we continue this series, because this is the end of part 1 of What If Deku Became Batman. Izuku Midoriya finally enters a new age for himself. And that new age is entering UA High School. UA High School is a totally different time for Izuku Midoriya, because when he enters UA High School, he finally gets his chance at being a hero. Because right here and right now is everything that he expected and everything that he wanted for. Now, the very start, he meets a lot of his classmates, he meets Aizawa, and quickly they're thrusted into a quirk assessment. Now, this quirk assessment, well, Izuku is immediately evaluated on what he can do, what he can possibly do in terms of capabilities and stuff like that. But it's all raw strength, raw power, and luckily enough, he does have one for all, so he's able to utilize quite a bit here in terms of raw power and speed and quickness. And he excels at almost everything, getting first in borderline every single thing he does outside of the ball throw, being that the ball throw is held by Ochako Uraka, who can literally throw the ball into space. But that's kind of beyond the point. Now, he does excel in every single aspect of the quirk assessment exam. And, well, let's just say Aizawa is pretty damn impressed by what Izuku can basically do. There's been a lot of hype around Izuku, a lot of it, right? Teachers and faculty members alike believe that this kid is the future of UA and the future of everything that is to come. He has a very special quirk. He excels at basically all martial arts you can possibly think of. He excels at almost every single academic standard you could possibly think of. And he just kind of has evolved over time, so much so that everybody believes that he's borderline kind of hero ready, and he's only a first year in UA. But Aizawa looks to basically break the kid. He looks to stress him out and work him overload to the point where he wants him to kind of fall apart, lose, and then he can build him back up and make him an even better hero. But Aizawa quickly would realize that this is going to be harder than he possibly could imagine. So much so that at the end of the quirk assessment, he believed that he would have some struggle, but he didn't have struggle at all. So what he decides to do is to say that the number 1 student in the quirk assessment, well, they're going to be fighting for the right for the last person to not get expelled. So Izuku, actually being the number one, is told that he's going to fight somebody, and as long as he wins, well, the last person, or the person who's at the very bottom, well, they can still be in UA. And this last person is Hagakure, someone by the name of, or the hero kind of name of Invisible Girl, or everybody kind of knows her as Invisible Girl. And Izuku asks, well, who is he gonna fight? Like, who is he going to go head to head with? Who is he gonna spar with? But Aizawa tells him that this is no spar. This is a fight. This is something that he's going to have to do in the field, something he's going to have to take on himself. No gadgets, all hands. And he tells him that he is going to have to understand that he's going to have to sacrifice a lot of things in life to make sure that people are safe. So this is just the start of him sacrificing, because as long as he wins, well, the other person doesn't get expelled. But if he loses, he's going to have to hold on to that kind of grief forever, that person is done and dusted. And Izuku nods his head and says he's ready for whatever's to come. And Aizawa nods as well, saying that his challenge and his person he's going to have to fight, well, is him. Is Aizawa himself. The class is completely shocked by this, but Aizawa tells him that he has 5 minutes. 5 minutes to defeat him, and if he doesn't, well then, guess what? It seems as if he's not good enough and the other person should just be expelled, and maybe Izuku should be expelled along with her. In which Izuku is shocked to hear this and tells Aizawa that he'll take on this challenge head first, and he'll show him what he's truly capable of. In which Aizawa begins the fight and immediately can tell that Izuku is no joke, that he is far from a joke. And normally he'd be able to keep up with somebody even though he has really good martial arts skills, but Izuku doesn't just have martial arts skills, he has one for all. And on top of that, he is learning the fight style of Aizawa as they are fighting. It seems like Aizawa is trying to cancel Izuku's quirk, but even as he does and as he limits one for all, it seems as if he can't actually quirk or kind of cancel out the quirk of his fast learning, but also it doesn't stop him from utilizing his martial arts. Izuku's on a different plane of existence in terms of martial arts compared to Aizawa, even though Aizawa is no freaking joke in terms of throwing hands. But Aizawa realizes very quickly that this fight is not going in his favor, and he tries to kind of land a blow that would send Izuku back, because at the end of the day, he is a grown man and Izuku is still a kid, right? He's still a teenager. And in terms of strength and in terms of kind of genetic builds, I mean, Izuku isn't actually fully grown yet, so he is lacking in that regard. But when Izuku is finally able to kind of land a flush blow utilizing one for all, and utilizing the kind of the full capabilities that he currently has of one for all, he's able to lay Aizawa on the ground and basically get Aizawa to the point where Aizawa feels as if he can't really fight much more. And Izuku tells Aizawa to basically quit and yield right now before they have to basically continue on to people getting even more hurt, including both of them. Izuku is stressing his body out during this fight, so he basically tells Aizawa that he should just stop fighting now, in which Aizawa would end up agreeing and they would stop their fight as commanded. And of course, Hagakure would be allowed to stay in school, but Aizawa basically says like he wasn't going to actually expel her in the first place, but wanted to see where Izuku was truly at. Izuku tells him that he doesn't have to worry about him slacking off or him thinking that he's already too good. And he tells Aizawa like flat out that just because he defeated him here doesn't mean he's already surpassed Aizawa. Aizawa has a ton of experience in the art of being a hero, has a ton of experience that Izuku wants to learn himself, and says that he doesn't have to worry about all of that. There's a reason why Izuku's becoming a hero. He wants to help those who are basically being robbed and hurt in plain daylight, but just as much wants to help those who are afraid of the dark and are being attacked and sieged and hurt during the nighttime, where a lot of heroes are not out and about and saving others. He tells Aizawa that He wants to be very similar to him. He wants to be the person that saves as much as possible, but leads by example as well. In which Aizawa nods and kind of slightly smirks and thinks that the kid, maybe he'll be alright. Maybe Izuku will be alright. He tells the whole class that they are done for today, so finish up what they have to finish up, go to your other classes and so on, but he'll see them tomorrow. And the next day, he would see them, obviously the next day, and of course, it would be leading up into All Might gaining, or getting them for a bit of a training session. Now, this training session is heroes versus villains, and frankly, this is going to be very easy for someone like Izuku Midoriya. Izuku and Ochako versus Tenya and Bakugo is a very easy fight. I mean, very easy. Izuku outclasses Bakugo kind of by a long shot, just based on Izuku's understanding of his quirk and also his ability to basically use martial arts upon Bakugo. But Bakugo has that respect for Izuku, so even after being beaten, Bakugo still wants to kind of learn some martial arts and some other techniques that he could possibly utilize to kind of enhance his own quirk and frankly enhance himself to a degree that he wants to see. And Izuku eventually becomes a lot better and a lot more in terms of the classroom environment. Right? A lot of the people that actually enjoy being around Izuku and aren't like ego driven, they really ask Izuku for help with their quirks and all this stuff, right? Izuku understands and can break down their quirk even sometimes better than they can, because Izuku's fast learning quirk allows him to kind of learn and utilize the knowledge he has and actually puts into effect kind of countermeasures for each person that is even there. So much so that he can find strengths and weaknesses within them and helps them kind of cover up the weaknesses but enhance the positives. And Izuku's like weirdly a support hero for his teammates and his classmates, which is kind of funny in a way because Izuku is better at basically anything to do with fighting, but he still is pretty helpful in the act of actually support. And All Might sees this as well and believes that even more throughout this time that his choice in candidate of being the successor is better and better, because it's obvious that Izuku can do things that he never could. Advice, the way Izuku's giving advice, and also the fighting techniques that Izuku is using, All Might could never do those things, or at least couldn't do those things. And Izuku begins to even has in the past, worked with All Might, worked with him for his kind of combat skills, and tells All Might that sometimes raw power isn't enough. Sometimes you have to basically be able to aim your punch perfectly so you can get the most out of it. You have to turn over those punches to the best ability you possibly can. Just because you're strong doesn't mean you are the strongest you can be. You could always be stronger. In which even All Might understands that concept, but didn't really think too much about it when he was going through his own hero journey, in which Izuku is wise beyond his years, and it shows over and over again, especially with his other classmates who now are taking leaps of progression because of Izuku himself. Now, their next training session would be past this whole heroes versus villains thing, and it would actually be dealing with some rescue training, which Izuku is actually pretty excited for this because this is very down his alleyway. Izuku wants to definitely get ahead of himself kind of with this whole kind of rescue type of training. And when he gets in there, he realizes that something is a little bit off. Something deep down inside him is kind of telling him that something is coming, as if something is about to show up and someone is about to get hurt, in which he can't put his finger on it just yet, but it's as if he's kind of sensing danger to an extent, but not really to the degree that you would think, because eventually a portal would open and villains would pour out, and Izuku would realize that he was sensing somehow these people that were coming. Now, as they invade, Izuku watches as Aizawa basically tells everybody to basically stay put, be protected, and Pro Hero 13 will protect them and so on. But before he even jumps into action, he points toward Izuku and tells him to get going, that it's time to go to work, in which Izuku nods his head and slightly smiles as immediately he would basically kind of throw off his normal clothes, and he would have a suit underneath them, in which everybody is pretty in shock by this, saying that they didn't know he actually had a suit kind of left over, in which Izuku tells him that this is rescue training and he felt that his gadgets were needed, and luckily enough he brought them. He dives in with Aizawa, throwing multiple batarangs toward a ton of these heroes, or a ton of these villains, excuse me. As they explode, they would knock out quite a few of them. As they would fight, they would clash with these lower grade villains, and frankly, it would be pretty easy. Him and Aizawa would just beat the heck out of some of these villains, to the point where it felt as if this wasn't even kind of fair for them. But the real test would be Kurogiri, Shigaraki, and the Nomu. These Nomus are something of kind of insane proportion. Izuku watches as the Nomu is about to land a blow to Aizawa, but Izuku is able to jump in front and block. As he blocks, he kind of parries it to the side, and he can feel that the Nomu is kind of made of a different type of skin. It's as if his skin is more absorbent, and it seems as if even his own punches and kicks won't do as much as he could possibly imagine. Realizing that maybe raw strength and power is kind of what you need here, at least at this moment. At least at the moment, until he can figure out how to defeat this thing. So he kind of fends off the Nomu to like the best degree he possibly can, in which he definitely can do it. I mean, he can go blow for blow with the Nomu for the most part, but he's able to kind of avoid a lot of the punches the Nomu throws. He tries to expose any weaknesses and even cuts at certain parts of the Nomu, trying to cut through the tough skin of that Nomu, but it's extremely hard to do so. He's trying to cut through the skin, but it's really not budging. But eventually, when he would cut right below the knee on the back of his leg, he would get the Nomu to basically collapse onto one knee. The Nomu would actually lose feeling in one of his legs, to the point where he can't actually control it to the best degree. And of course, it is kind of like a brain dead creature, so the creature still tries to kind of go forward even though his leg is completely limp. Izuku realizes that with enough power and strength, he can actually break through the kind of the shock absorption, and with critical movement and critical blows, it seems as if he can actually get through that shock absorption, as long as he's not excessively trying to lay complete and utter strength within it. So maybe he did find a way around just, actually utilizing full strength, but as he's doing this and as he's trying to chip away at the Nomu slowly but surely, he would actually see a hand show up out of nowhere about to grab him on the face. And as he's about to try to react to this, immediately Aizawa would utilize his quirk, so when the hand would grab Izuku, it would actually do nothing. Shigaraki would be shocked to hear this or see this, and Izuku would basically stab the hand with a batarang, and as he pulls the hand back, and he's pissed because the batarang just stuck him, he would pull the batarang out and tell Izuku that he's going to pay for that. In which Izuku shakes his head and taps his wrist a little bit as he clicks a couple buttons, and the batarang would explode. Now, this isn't your normal explosion though. The batarang would explode into this weird cement-like thing that would firm up really quick. And as Shigaraki would actually try to move, it would stick him to the ground, and he would be unable to actually touch the cement to break himself free. And as he's struggling to try to do so, and as he's struggling to try and kind of use his quirk on the cement, he's unable to do so, and it gives an opening for the other heroes, especially when Aizawa is keeping his eyes on Shigaraki. And this would leave an opening, especially when All Might would finally arrive. All Might would take over the duties of fighting the Nomu, who's already weakened by Izuku, and Izuku himself actually targets Kurogiri, their only escape plan. And they're trying their best to basically subdue Kurogiri, and out of nowhere, Bakugo would come spiraling with an explosion, landing an explosion directly to the armor of Kurogiri, and basically knocking him down and almost out. Izuku would subdue him with another batarang, kind of shooting this cement once over on Kurogiri as well, in which kind of restricts them entirely, or restricts them to a large degree. Now, the Nomu is now basically subdued, and so is Shigaraki. Kurogiri tries to open a portal to save Shigaraki, but it seems as if he is actually restricted, so much so that he can't really do it. And eventually would lead to kind of Shigaraki being pulled away and brought to a different position by Izuku. Izuku knows how important this villain must be if he's actually talking the way he's talking. It seems like Shigaraki is talking as if he is a part of some master plan, so he refuses to allow Shigaraki to just leave. And he's not going to allow Kurogiri to just get him out of here. So Izuku does everything in his power to stop the portals from actually pulling Shigaraki away, in which Izuku would be successful because as these kind of portals would fail and as these things would happen, Bakugo would land multiple explosions to the armor of Kurogiri, weakening to the point where he actually passes out. Now, with the kind of League of Villains completely restricted, Izuku and everybody else is kind of good to go. They're all fine, and as other heroes would arrive, they would take all these villains away, including the kind of brain-dead Nomu, in which they are curious about for the fact that the Nomu is an absolute kind of like clear-headed idiot to the point where it seems as if he doesn't really know what he's doing. It seems like the Nomu is kind of out of it and completely like unaware of what he's actually doing, and it seems like there's an actual human within him, but obviously a normal human wouldn't do the things willingly the Nomu is doing. So it is kind of a scary thing, and they learn that it's basically kind of like a brainwashed, almost dead, if not dead person within the Nomu, which is very, very sketchy. But with the League of Villains completely captured and kind of that situation handled, the students of Class 1A kind of get a bit of a break, and they definitely needed a bit of a break, because at the end of the day, there is some issues and situations that they definitely have to deal with mentally because of an invasion of villains already on a very early day of them being part of UA. But they do have, when they come back, the UA Sports Festival, which Izuku is extremely excited about. The UA Sports Festival is something he's been extremely amped about for a while now, and with some clearance from UA, he's actually able to utilize a ton of gadgets that he created himself, in which this would be a way for him to show off his gadgets and possibly sell them and make a lot of money for doing so, and he's excited to show them off, because frankly, all of these things are going to benefit him massively. So much so that Izuku is actually able to wear his entire suit out, which includes a cape and his armor and his suit, making him more durable and stuff like that. And he can literally use his cape as a motive of kind of flying in a way, but it's more like gliding. But with One For All, he can kind of boost off to the point where he can kind of glide and kind of push air in a way where he can fly or glide a lot longer. And the first part of the UA Sports Festival is something pretty obvious, right? You got the whole speech and stuff like that, which Izuku is involved in, because Izuku did and is the #1 student in Class 1A. So he does his little speech saying that he hopes that he impresses everybody, and the hopes that they all have a good time and blah, 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 and that he's going to do his best to win, and so on and so forth. And of course, everyone celebrates, everyone cheers. And as the students begin, and this is the first part of the UA Sports Festival, they have a somewhat simple thing, which is an obstacle course race. Izuku would, as the timer starts, and as midnight would tell them all to go, he would have no problem flying through a ton of things, right? The corridor would be easy. He would soar right above everyone else. And then as they pass robots and canyons, it would be so simple for Izuku. So much so that Bakugo himself kind of just abandons the idea of even taking it slow and just starts blasting using explosions to try and keep up. Even when trying to catch Izuku, it is extremely difficult, but Izuku does slow down just a little bit as they approach this landmine section. He tries to approach it kind of slowly, but as he does, he realizes that he would love to try to, like, mess with these devices through, like, tampering, but he actually can't tamper with those devices the way he wants to, because they're not actually devices, right? They're not actual, like, time bombs C4 or anything like that. So it's a little bit different than what he would like to deal with. Now, he would try and basically jump around and pass everything up pretty quickly. And he would think that he would have quite a bit of a lead, but Bakugo would be right on his tail. So much so that Bakugo would push Izuku into one of the bombs, exploding it, and Izuku would be sent flying straight up. Izuku would smirk as he sees Bakugo trying to take the lead, and he would glide back down toward Bakugo. Izuku would immediately kick toward Bakugo, but he would dodge it. Bakugo dodging and weaving just by a little bit, but Izuku would smack his hand on Bakugo's back. As Bakugo would feel this smack, Izuku would kind of laugh, and Bakugo would ask what's so funny, because he missed. He didn't land a clean blow, but Izuku says that he wasn't trying to, he was just trying to do this, in which basically a Batarang with kind of like this magnetic sense to another Batarang seemingly would attach to something in the ground, immediately pinning Bakugo straight to the ground. Izuku says that it was a good time seeing him, because at least they get a bit of time to show off some of the gadgets, but he'll let him free when he crosses the finish line. Izuku would basically fly by, about to cross the finish line, as he hears an explosion right behind him. Izuku smirks as he sees that Bakugo was able to get out, but it seems as if he's unable to basically catch up with Izuku, barely losing to Izuku. And Izuku realizes that he really should have taken things a lot more seriously, because he almost gave up first place, especially to Bakugo, because he was kind of messing around a little too much, in which he obviously will take that into account and he'll learn from it, so he won't do that the very next time. Izuku obviously would get number 1 and get into the first place. This would lead them to the cavalry battle, but nothing really that much would change in this cavalry battle. A lot of the people that would join him normally would still join him, and with the gadgets, with the higher usage of One for All and his ability in martial arts, Izuku is able to kind of keep his team away. And when they basically float in the air using Ochako's quirk, or when they decide to do so, Izuku can make it so that they kind of hover and float for a long time without even using Ochako's quirk, leading to them kind of stalling out time and winning on basically a time management kind of play. And obviously they would have their million or 10 million point ban still secure, and they would easily win the cavalry battle. Now this is where things would get interesting. Things would be very interesting, because Izuku would have his first chance at a 1 versus 1 battle. But this 1 versus 1 battle is against someone by the name of Hitoshi Shinso. Shinso is totally different. He's from general studies, and nobody knows that much about him. But luckily, one of his classmates tells him that if he answers a question that Shinso asks, that he will basically be drowned in mind control, and that he needs to be very careful if he doesn't want to be taken over, and basically, well, he doesn't want to lose. In which Izuku nods his head and understands the assignment, and he basically takes on Shinso very normally. But he wonders to himself, just why is Shinso unable to actually join, class 1B, class 1A, or anything like that, any hero course. And this would lead to Izuku actually talking to Shinso. But here's the thing. When Shinso would begin kind of questioning Izuku would try to avoid answering the questions, but it seems as if he actually does answer a question, but just on accident. Trying to get information out of Shinso probably wasn't the best idea during this fight, but it would lead to Izuku being a bit brainwashed. And as he's about to be forced to step out of bounds, he actually begins to see a ton of other figures that would stand in front of Izuku and tell him that he is the future, that he is the only one that could truly save society forever. In which Izuku looks at them but can't say a word. But as Izuku would look back into the darkness, well, he would embrace it. As he embraces it, he can feel his body surge with one for all, and it wakes him up almost instantly. He would immediately dash away from the edge of the kind of the platform, and he would smirk and he would laugh just a little bit. He would say that was pretty interesting. He never felt that before, but he'll avoid that this time. He would dash towards Shinso as he would basically beat him in hand-to-hand combat so swiftly that after he throws him out, he would tell Shinso that he really should have been working on a lot of other things if he wasn't going to have the quirk powerful enough to get into UA the normal and traditional way, in which Izuku tells him that he's been working on martial arts his entire life, that he's been working, training, and he's been learning, always learning. And that's something that every single person should do, especially someone aspiring to be a hero. Izuku would kind of nod at Shinso and then kind of watch as everybody would cheer him on, and he would raise his hand up and thank everybody for the support. But as he's kind of celebrating, as he's basically having a good time and everybody's cheering, he would walk forward and see a dark, very, very dark portal open up right in front of him. Everyone is concerned. Everyone's confused. What's going on? What's happening? We need info on that portal. We need info on that thing. But before they could even react, Izuku tries to move out of the way, but the portal would consume him. As it consumes him, he would open his eyes and he would see just darkness. As lights would flicker on, as the lights would go on one by one in a giant, what seems to be storage area, he would see somebody across from him. See somebody with a mask and with basically no face to be kind of shown. Izuku looks closely and the man is dressed well, but at the same time has a mask that seems to be helping him breathe, in which the man says that it seems like they have a new hero in town, a new hero that might even outclass the one before and even will be better than any after. Izuku is confused and asks the man, who the heck is he? And what is he doing? And why did he bring him here? In which, as Izuku would say these things, the man would introduce himself. He would say that he is all for one. And that soon, his mentor, soon everybody around him will crumble to ash. And as he says this, Nomus would begin to appear all around, Nomu after Nomu after Nomu, and he tells Izuku that he's going to see what kind of hero he truly can be. A portal would open up below All For One, and as he would disappear, Nomu after Nomu, we're talking 10s, 20, maybe even 30 Nomus charge at the kid. Izuku stands his ground, and he's ready for the fight of his absolute life. But for now, that's where we're going to end part 2 of What If Deku Became Batman. Izuku Midoriya faces down a ton of Nomus. And we're talking 10s, 20, 30 Nomus at least. Everybody staring at these Nomus in complete and utter shock. Or really, he's staring at the Nomus in complete and utter shock. And he's ready to take them all on, because it seems as if this was all a trap made for him to fail. But he refuses to leave that notion in the truth, because he doesn't want to fail. So what does he do? He lets everything go. He starts absolutely beating on these Nomus, running through every single one of them as quick as possible. Beating, destroying, and all of the above. He tries absolutely everything in his arsenal. He decides to kind of crank up One For All to an even higher limit that he really never does. and he begins to finally smash through these Nomus. And as he's knocking and beating every single one of them, he finally is getting to the last couple, and with his whole body basically on the verge of falling apart, with his whole body kind of feeling this stress of fighting all these Nomus, his body bloodied, battered, tattered, and everything. He comes down to these last few Nomus, defeating them, and there's just a pile of just bodies everywhere. There is Nomus laying dormant on the ground, unable to move, and Izuku stands there. His suit torn to shreds, his body tattered, bruised, bloodied. Even the blood of many of these other creatures kind of cover him as well. And he stands there with complete determination in his eyes. Determination that he refused to lose. Determination that he refused to allow to waver. But this would force Izuku into something he wasn't expecting. He would force Izuku into becoming something that initially he thought he was, but now he truly is. Because he would begin to kind of avoid this academia portion of everything. Initially, everybody would search for him. UA, police, everything. But they couldn't find him. They couldn't find him not one bit. But Izuku, where he's at this place. A very tall building that nobody knows about. A building that was now created to be his hideout. An abandoned building that is a bit of a construction site. And Izuku would look over the entire city, the entire country, would look over Japan itself, and he'd be looking down, and he would be thinking. He'd be thinking that if he wants to be the hero he's supposed to be, he needs to do it now. He stands on the building looking down, and all he can think about is the potential that he has. All he can think about is everything that went wrong. Everything. They tried to take him away from his learning, from his academia, from learning to be a hero, the hero he wants to be. But it made him realize that they need him now more than ever. That they need him before things go too far off the rails. With Shigaraki, with Kurogiri already put away, he knows that All For One needs to go down. And that is all he can think about. But before that could even happen, everybody wonders what happened to Izuku. Days would go by, weeks would go by, and eventually they would start going on their internships with the assumption that Izuku is gone, that he might even be passed away. And everybody believes that they didn't do a good enough job to protect one of their students. But one day, when everybody is at a standstill, when Izuku is standing on a building waiting, he hears something. He hears something that would make him question some things. Because he hears the words of someone he once knew. He hears the words of Tenya Ida talking to somebody, saying that he's going to get his revenge and that he is going to feel the same pain that his brother felt. In which Izuku is confused by this, but as he looks over, he can see the hero killer opposite of Tenya Ida. The hero killer threatening Tenya Ida and is about to take him out for good. Well, Tenya would stand there as he tries to fight, but he can't fight. He stands no chance against the hero killer. That's until Izuku would glide down and kick the hero killer directly into a wall. Izuku, with now donning a mask, with now donning his suit, now donning the true Caped Crusader of the Batman persona, tells Tenya to get out of here right now, or else. Izuku looks back at the hero killer, and the hero killer would look at him and say that it's impressive, extremely impressive. He deems Izuku as a true hero. He was taken away, got rid of by one of the most powerful villains ever. He was just a kid. He was just a student. But what did he do? He fought. He scratched. He clawed his way back up. And now he's here to save people. Just like All Might. Izuku would look at the hero killer and tell him that he's wrong, that he's not like All Might. He's far from All Might. This right here, this is where he believes heroes should be. Heroes should be out when it's dark, when it's absolutely terrifying, instilling fear in every villain so they never come out to hurt anybody ever again. Izuku would begin to fight the hero killer, and initially the hero killer believes them to be evenly matched in combat skills. But Izuku begins to crank up his one for all and even starts utilizing something that he's been working on, utilizing something known as a Black Whip. He begins to utilize Black Whip in a way that, well, everybody would be surprised to ever see if they did see him, and Tenya himself is surprised as well, believing that this must be just another technology, but it's not. It is part of Izuku. It is part of his arsenal of utilizing one for all and utilizing his quirks. He begins to absolutely beat on the hero killer, slamming him into the walls, into the ground, and eventually knocking him out. He would then cuff the hero killer with quirk canceling cuffs, believing that he needed to make sure that he was restricted and contained. He would kind of tape up the hero killer entirely with everything he has, with all of his gadgets, by the way, which is still a plethora of things, and he would have him completely restrained. Tenya would be on the ground in shock as Izuku would grab him by the shirt and help him up, telling Tenya to go back to the other place, or go back to UA, go back to everybody else, learn, get stronger, get better, everything. Don't seek vengeance. Don't seek revenge. Don't. Leave that for others. Leave that to him. That Izuku says that he will protect everybody that he needs to protect. And as he sends Black Whip up top of the building, he streams himself back up there, slinging back up as if he's some sort of, kind of like grappling hook of some sort, you could even say. And Izuku would watch as Endeavor would even arrive, and many other heroes would arrive as well. But Izuku would be gone without a trace, gone without anybody noticing, and everybody would begin hearing rumors about Izuku Midoriya, that he's still alive, that he is this Batman figure, that he is this vigilante that is currently scouring around Japan, that he is now at large. And everybody is wondering, what are they really going to do? He's always done good, and he continues to do only good things. So why would they try and go capture him? They have villains to go handle, villains to go capture. But Izuku, well, he stays hidden away for a while. He just only comes out during the night for the most part, saving just people he could save, right? He stops villains, and frankly, it helps a lot with the crime rate. It begins to plummet. Izuku's just presence alone starts affecting the amount of crimes that currently happen. And it continues to go on this way for quite a while. And Izuku would continue kind of researching and trying to find out where All For One currently is, because that is what he needs to find out. Izuku wants to find out where All For One is, where could he possibly be, and also how are they going to deal with him. Because he's dead serious about taking this guy out, putting him behind bars, and basically protecting the country of Japan forever. He wants to make sure that this stands, that All For One isn't allowed to continue on with his reign of terror, and he would eventually get that opportunity. Because Izuku would be searching for All For One, and eventually he would find him. Eventually, he would come across the building, and this is where All For One currently is. This is where All For One is currently residing. All For One is waiting. But at the same time, he's wondering if Izuku's really going to go through with ending him, because that's what's going to need to happen. If he wants to win, if Izuku wants to win, he's going to have to kill him. Or at least that's what All For One is believing in his own head, and what All For One kind of makes very known when Izuku confronts him. Izuku tells him that he's battered countless Nomus. He's battered everything that All For One has ever sent after him, and now he continues to cut down the villain world, and frankly, he'll continue to just decimate the villain world so that there's nothing left, so that there is not a single thing that is going to need to be worried about. That every single thing that All For One tries to portray, every single thing that All For One tries to uphold, it will all come crumbling to dust. And he will make sure of all of it. That everything that All For One does, there's no way he will win. There is no way that he will be victorious at all. In which Izuku would have his standoff, and as they have this standoff, well, All For One tells him that he's going to have to kill him. That the only way to stop him is to end him. In which Izuku looks at him and shakes his head and tells him that there's always another way. But for the sake of this entire world and for the sake of everybody, he would. That he would end All For One if he really needed to end him. But he tells All For One that for now, this isn't the only option. As Izuku is saying these things, he hears a loud crash through the wall. A crash what seems to be what he was expecting. He would throw a batarang immediately at All For One, as All For One would be able to block it, but Izuku would use it to kind of restrict All For One, as this cement-like substance would kind of ground him. As All Might himself would come barreling through the wall, landing a punch, sending All For One through another wall, sending him outside into the streets. All Might would then dash out and begin trying to fight All For One. Izuku would see as the other heroes would converge on him, but Izuku would throw a smoke bomb on the ground and leave without a trace. As he would sit on top of a building, Izuku would await an opening that he can fight alongside All Might once again. All Might would get basically hit with a black tendril of some sorts, and he would try to back up and recover. As this is happening, Izuku would come spiraling in, basically flying at a really high speed, crashing into All For One. As he does this, he would begin to fight All For One, landing crucial blows, and then leading to basically Izuku and All Might standing side by side, ready to take on All For One and ending this for good. They would clash with All For One, fight with All For One, and would begin to beat All For One. And it seems as if everybody is watching this kind of new generation of heroes transcend, because they all know who this guy is. It is no secret who Izuku is. There is no kind of complicated action in terms of it all. But as Izuku begins to kind of fight All For One, and they would get a massive opening, and frankly, they would have this kind of just easy time defeating him, as All For One is being cuffed and defeated, or about to be cuffed and fully defeated. And as All Might himself really isn't in that big of jeopardy himself, in terms of losing as much as One For All as he normally would have, Izuku would be kind of ready to restrict and cuff All For One, but All For One would tell him that he really should think about the choice that he's making. Really think about the choice that he's basically choosing, and he shows Izuku something. A picture on a phone and a video to go alongside it of his mother captured, and All For One tells Izuku that if he wants to know where she is and wants to save her, that he needs to beat him. As basically All For One points at All Might himself, Izuku would look at All Might and would have the phone in his hand, as Izuku would kind of put something on the phone, or is what seems to be on the phone, and he tosses it on the ground. Izuku would look toward All Might and tell All Might that there is no choice here anymore, that there is only one action and only one action that can be made. And he begins to fight All Might. All Might and him go back and forth, back and forth as if they're kind of basically clashing with each other. But Izuku's technique and his ability to learn fighting styles is overwhelming All Might. So much so that it really feels like the fight is swaying so heavily in this young man's favor. It seems as if the student has already become the master. It seems as if Izuku is already at such a high level, a way higher level than All Might even himself. He would be basically landing crucial blows to All Might and would then throw him over his shoulders, slamming him on the ground. Izuku would have basically his foot up to All Might's neck, and All For One would tell him to do it, that he has to end him or he'll never know where his mother is. He'll never be able to find basically his mother, and that she will die, that they will end her for good. But as he puts his foot closer to All Might's neck, as he's about to bear down on it, he would hear a buzzing in his own mask, and then he would hear a voice. The voice would be his mother, and the heroes would say that they have her. Izuku would smirk as he would help up All Might and immediately knock out All For One with a batarang. All Might would immediately tell him that he could tell that it was all a ruse pretty quickly, because the blows that he was taking from Izuku, they were not very serious. They looked very serious, but they didn't hit hard at all. Izuku was pulling his punches drastically, only utilizing a small tiny bit of One For All, and immediately, of course, All Might could understand and kind of figured out what he was doing. And All For One, he was none the wiser. He had no idea that this final gambit would fall flat on its face, and he would be arrested and put in prison for the rest of his life. Izuku tells All Might that he has to stay away from the schools and continue being the hero that he is now, being a vigilante, because frankly, he doesn't know what else is to come. But this is how he could use One For All to its highest degree, and he knows it to be a fact. That everybody else, being around everybody else, well, it's just restricting. Being around everyone else is putting others in a comparable position, in which All Might tells him that he gets it, that he understands, and that, frankly, the only laws that he's really broken are the ones involving not having a hero license, and everything else he's done, it's pretty much by the book in terms of morality sense of a hero, in which All Might tells him that they'll work on something. They'll work on something very soon where he can be independent and also get some kind of like legality to it, in which that's exactly what they do, granting him some sort of provisional hero license, but keeping him separate from many others, in which everything he does now will now be kind of headed by All Might himself, and the other students would continue on with working through their own studies. Izuku himself has already granted at a college level on almost every single subject and every single thing known to man. I mean, his quirk is perfect for learning, and he has passed and excelled at everything. So in terms of being in high school, he doesn't really need to be. And that's exactly what occurs. Izuku going independent and also kind of dealing with things a completely different way. And with now All Might on his side and with All Might to help him, it seems like his hero journey will continue to accelerate. But a new challenge and a new thing for him to deal with will come up very, very shortly when dealing with someone known as Overhaul. Now, with limited information, he'll have to basically team up with a past sidekick of even All Might himself, known as Sir Night-Eye. But we're going to have to wait till the finale to hear what happens to Izuku, basically in the final part of What If Deku Became Batman. Izuku Midoriya is finally on his own. Well, sort of. He's now given a provisional hero license, and as long as he stays in contact and is monitored by All Might, everything he does is now legal, at least in the bounds of being a hero. Now, Izuku continues his research and continues to look into things for these various different places and different agencies, right? And he continues to actually work and starts to work with someone by the name of Sir Night-Eye. Sir Night-Eye is a very big hero, a massive one. And everybody knows of Sir Night-Eye and knows how good of a hero he truly is. But on top of that, he also is working a case trying to figure out what's going on with the one and only Overhaul. And this would thrust Izuku into kind of the action space of the finding of Overhaul. And with his investigative and also learning capabilities, he begins to kind of deduce that Overhaul has certain routes that he likes to take. Now, he is in some sort of a lair or a hideout for a long period of time, and he even can find that location very easily. But he also tells them that he goes on these routes from time to time. He goes on these routes that are very specific. It's here, it's here, it's here. And he does each one separately on different days and on different days of the week at specific hours. And he needs to understand, and everybody needs to understand, that mistakes will always happen. And you have to be prepared for a mistake to happen. In which Izuku would put a picture up, and it's a picture of a young girl by the name of Eri. He says that yes, she will cause the mistake, and it's not her fault because she is still good at heart. She is still a good person, and she is trying to basically survive. In which he tells everybody there that she will cause the mistake, but they need to watch him for weeks on end. But what he doesn't know, and what Izuku himself doesn't predict, is that mistake will come about almost instantly. Because Izuku and Mirio are currently watching Overhaul, and Eri, well, she would break away and begin running off into nothing. She begins to run off and kind of do her own thing and tries to get away and blah, 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 and stumbles towards the street. As she stumbles toward the street, Izuku would look at Mirio and nod his head. She would turn the corner, and as she does, well, Mirio would grab her and get her away from the area almost instantly. Now, with Overhaul turning that same corner, he would look and she was gone. He would begin to panic, freak out, until he hears someone behind him land. He would turn and see, well, Batman. He would see Izuku Midoriya standing there with his cape and mask, and also with his basically weaponry and gadgets ready to go. He would see Izuku and think that he must have done this. What did he do with her? Izuku says that he has no idea what he's talking about. And frankly, all he's been looking for is him. All he's been looking for is Overhaul himself. He's done research on him. Very, very interesting guy. His powers, very strong. Very, very strong. But what really makes Overhaul are the people that surround him. The people that fear him and the people that run his gang. A mafia of some sorts. He looks at him and says, the Shia Hazaikai has ruled the underground for quite a while. And frankly, he believes, and Izuku believes, that this right here is how it will end. The Shia Hazaikai will fall and crumble, and it would crumble quicker than you could possibly imagine. Of course, this will not go well and bode well with the one that stands in front of him by the name of Overhaul, but Izuku says that there is no matter, there is no concern, that there only is solution. And that's exactly what Izuku does. He provides solution. Because when Overhaul would start to try and do things, when he would try to attack Izuku would make him look like an absolute joke. Like a joke. So much so that Overhaul would be giving up and his face would tell it all. Overhaul would throw spikes, anything, change his body, anything that he could possibly do to combat this person. But Izuku seems so prepared, so agile, and so much stronger and faster than Overhaul. Izuku tells him that All Might is the symbol of peace. The sun rays that covers the night sky, the sun rays that covers everything, that makes dark places look bright. That's what All Might is. But him, that's not who he is. He is going to be the #1 hero, but he is not All Might. He does not bring the light to cover the buildings, he stands and is within the darkness. He thrives off of it, and he makes sure that Overhaul himself understands this, that there is no way of fearing. He has no fear with this villain. He has no fear with the person that stands in front of him, that Overhaul does not scare him, and all of his kind of repertoire and all of the things that he's capable of doing means nothing. It doesn't mean a single thing. And Izuku absolutely beats on Overhaul, making him look like a joke of a hero and a joke of a villain, or make him look like a joke of a combatant is what I mean, obviously not a hero, and making him look like someone that was not a threat at all. He would cuff Overhaul with quirk canceling cuffs, and he would drag him off, dragging him all the way to prison. Now, for starters, Overhaul is put away, but Sir Night-Eye is completely astounded by the fact that Izuku was able to approach the scenario in such a way, that was so easy and so simple to handle that it makes other heroes look like they lack heavily. And Izuku tells him that it's not that the other heroes lack heavily, it's that the other heroes see everything that's going on, and they see it as a game. They see it as something that they strive for, something that they wanted to do when they were children, and they wanted to be cool and be heroic and this and that. But being a hero is not about being cool, not about being popular, not about making money, but it's about saving people, about making it so that even in the darkest times, even in the alleyways that people would fear to walk through, they would feel safe no matter what. And that's exactly what Izuku is bringing. And Overhaul is just the first start of it all. Sir Night-Eye is impressed. Sir Night-Eye is floored by the idea that he was able to do such a thing. Floored by the idea that he was able to, for the most part, handle things in the way he handled them. And frankly enough, Izuku nods his head and makes it very known that he was able to handle as much as he can possibly imagine, and he would be able to handle even more. And Sir Night-Eye tells him that soon he would get more and more responsibility, and that the position he's at now, and with all the testing and everything going by him, he'll be okay. That everything that he's going to become as a hero is going to make every single person look at things a lot differently. Now, this would lead to Izuku kind of taking these tests and also these other things to basically make sure that he's completely and utterly qualified for his actual hero license, and that's what they're kind of looking at this moment. And he passes everything with flying colors. He passes literally everything. So we're talking from academics, we're talking to basically social and situational awareness, anything you can think of, any test that they would need to dignify him as a proper and secure hero, they would run, and he would pass better than everybody could possibly imagine, and better than any hero that has ever taken those tests. And he would pass them, and he would continue his journey of being a hero. But as he said before, when the night is gone, when the light is about, everybody feels a lot more safe, and many other heroes are okay with making sure that others stay maintained and others stay safe. But when the night approaches, when the moon is high and everybody knows that the darkness hides the true criminals, that's when Izuku would be out and about. That's when Izuku would patrol, and he would begin building an agency surrounded by it. He would be the head hero of them all, racking up more and more rankings as they go along. And of course, the one and only All Might would be on top as well, helping Izuku with a massive, or with his massive experience. He's going to be able to maintain and also kind of help out with Izuku's planning and so on and so forth. And people continue to join Izuku's agency, and even Sir Night-Eye kind of makes a communion in a way, kind of combining agencies to where Izuku works with them very heavily, works with Mirio, Sir Night-Eye, and many others very heavily, throughout this time. Now, the shutdown of the Shia Hazaikai would have happened extremely swiftly, as Izuku is able to kind of swiftly shut them down with the information that was given and the information that they had, and Izuku was able to kind of break down everything that they had to worry about, and frankly everything that they had to kind of remark for, right, and make sure that everything was accounted for, and that was all handled. Izuku was able to handle it all, and Izuku was able to approach it very, very practically, just like how he wants to, and just how he's been doing for a very long time now. And with this takedown, with villains now cowering, and with villains now being slowly but surely suppressed, it seems like more and more people are understanding, and people are now kind of realizing that this right here is the way of protection, that this right here is the only way that they can stay protected, that Izuku even knows that this takes sacrifice, that the hero world has changed so drastically, that the hero world looked at things like it was a monetary fun thing for children to get into. But Izuku knows, because, well, frankly, he learns fast. He learns really fast. And he knows what it takes to be a hero. And he knows that being a hero takes massive sacrifice. And what his agency will do is show the sacrifices that heroes on a day-to-day basis will do to make sure that the safety of the citizens stay basically about, that the safety is maintained, and that even the crime rates that All Might was able to get the world or Japan into, well, they're going to get them even lower, to the point where villains were almost non-existent. And Izuku climbed the ranks of becoming a hero, and as he reached the #1 hero, he would tell them all that this is not about publicity, that him being the #1 hero means everything. But at the same time, he knows that there is nothing to celebrate unless everybody is safe in their homes and safe from all crimes, not only in Japan, but around the world. And Izuku maintains this stance and continues to expand his arsenal of gadgets and weaponry and so on and so forth, and his contingency plans would continue to pile up more and more and more. And Izuku would maintain the peace of Japan, and everybody that follows him would do the same. Doesn't matter if we are in the daytime with the sun high and bright, or in the night where the sun sleeps and the moon is above them all. This doesn't matter. Either way, everybody is safe, and everybody will be safe not only in their own homes, but when they walk down the streets of Japan. And it's all because of one hero. And that hero is Izuku Midoriya, code name Batman. But that is where we're going to end off What If Deku Became Batman. And if you enjoyed, show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy these videos, and we'll have more to come very soon. Sorry for the bit of an inconsistent schedule. I've been doing kind of like every other day-ish, but I was trying to figure out some stuff and how I want to do certain things and so on and so forth. But I do plan on bringing y'all more what ifs. I have a solo leveling what if that I want to do. I also want to do some other stuff outside of My Hero Academia. Maybe do some more Tanjiro stuff. Maybe go back to Blue Lock and do some Blue Lock stuff. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe add in some Naruto things. That is definitely something I've considered as well. But yeah, that's all I really got to say. I have a lot planned for the future of this channel, and I hope you guys enjoy the videos nonetheless, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.